Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan, but I'm going to change the name of it as a one-off. It's the 10-minute smile, okay? And the topic of this 10-minute smile is the news that's filtering through and being confirmed first by Sky News that the SNP have decided to bin the Greens and to kick them out of their ministerial positions and therefore leave the SNP to govern under a minority government. Yeehaw! This is seen by many as the beginning of the end. Let me explain why. There's about 3 options that I can think of off the top of my head for the what happens next. Now, one possibility is nothing changes. That is a possibility. The Scottish National Party could run the government with a minority government. That is possible. And they could carry that until the next election, which isn't due at the latest until 2026. That is an option. The other option is, the other potential outcome is, the Scottish Government get to present a budget to Parliament and they fail to get it past Parliament. If that happens, the Scottish Government has to call an election. So the only thing they have to do to stay in power is get budgets accepted on a yearly basis. Now, the next budget isn't due until approximately April next year, but they start putting things through government, or through Parliament, I should say, round about November, December. And if they fail to get anything accepted, they are duty bound to call an election. Another possibility is a vote of no confidence by any single member of the Parliament. And what happens there, as we've seen previously just last week when there was an attempt to have a vote of no confidence, any MSP can pass the motion and it only needs to be agreed by 25 other members. And we would then have a full vote on the vote of no confidence, which could be either against any minister, or indeed the First Minister, or indeed every minister. If that happens and the vote goes through and is carried in the House, then that would obviously lead to an election if the whole cabinet office were voted in a vote, or voted out in a vote of no confidence. How likely are these things? Well, if you consider, particularly in the last 2 to 3 years since the last election, when the SNP needed to pull favour with the Greens to actually have power in the first place, the whole SNP, who were always slightly obnoxious to others, went into overdrive. And you only need to watch 10 minutes of any day within the debating chamber in Parliament to see what I'm talking about. They are terrible to every other party in opposition. Worse than in any time I can remember. So, good luck trying to convince others to accept your budget. The only way you would possibly get an accepted budget, in my eyes, is bribery. And asking at least one of the opposition parties what they want in a budget and pandering to their requests. That is not governing, that is not leadership. That is making a mockery of a system just so you can remain in power, but it's politics we're talking about. So maybe it could happen, but I really can't see that happening. I think it would be fun if there was a budget due earlier so we could see how that would play out in Holyrood. The other option is the vote of no confidence. How would that pan out? Well, I think if the opposition are proper opposition, it shows you a great barometer on the size of their gonads, if they've got the minerals for the job or not. Because if they want to remove this government, they could do so quite easily. I can't see if any of the leaders of Labour or indeed the Tories decided that this would be a good thing to do, that they wouldn't get every one of their own members to agree to it. I can't see the Greens being in a good mood with the SNP just now, so I'd imagine their 8 members could probably quite easily be tempted to vote for a vote of no confidence and put us into an early election and get rid of this mob quicker than expected. So that's where I would love to see happen. I would love to see in the next week or two a vote of no confidence tabled and passed. And if they do it on every minister, that would therefore lead to an election. We could possibly have a Scottish election before the Westminster one if it keeps getting pushed. Well, it's not postponed because it's not been called yet, but you know what I mean. They could have had an election in Westminster at any time this year, but it looks more likely towards the end of the year. But if the Scottish arms of the Labour and the Tories got their act together, could possibly have a Scottish election before the Westminster. I wonder if it would ever work that you could have both in the same day. That would be fun, wouldn't it? What a meltdown situation that would be for the SNP. But what are they? How likely are these outcomes? Well, the other outcome, as I say, the third outcome is nothing changes and they manage to run a minority government until 2026 and they run their full term. That is possible. But I can't see how likely it would be, and that would mean quite weak leadership from the Tories and the Labour Party in Scotland. And indeed, there's nothing to stop the Greens calling for a vote of no confidence. That would be exciting. But if none of that happens, which is quite sad if it did, if that doesn't happen, is it possible that the SNP could get a budget agreed in Parliament? I kind of don't think so without some bribery going on. And I think the least possible out of the 3 possibilities is that the SNP government get to do a full term. The irony of this isn't missed by me, where you consider what is about to happen. The fact that the Cass review suggested not giving children a drug that it felt was unsafe could actually be what leads to the downfall of this government. That is how mental Scottish politics is right now. That's how mad the SNP party are right now. That is how diabolical Holyrood is. When you consider that the outrage, or the fake outrage, by some in accepting a clinician's opinion that puberty blockers aren't so good for kids could lead to the downfall of the SNP. When people like me have been calling for the downfall of the SNP for quite a long time, isn't it ironic that what actually could lead to it was a Cass report? Because I ain't fallen for the other excuses that the Green Party were pushed into a corner by the Rainbow Greens over the Cass report to have a call to dissolve the Butte House Agreement. That's where it started. Okay, on the same day, the SNP government cancelled their climate change target for 2030. I fully understand that. But at that point, there was no call to pull the Butte House Agreement on that issue alone. There had already been moves to cancel the Butte House Agreement by the Rainbow Greens because they weren't happy with the reaction to the Cass report by the NHS, which again, it wasn't even the Scottish Government who made the decision. It was the NHS said, we're just going to pause giving kids these drugs until we can fully understand the findings of the Cass report. That's all that happened. A week later, we could be seeing the downfall of a government. Only in Scotland. Anyway, thanks very much for listening to my 10 minute smile. Great news as far as I'm concerned. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and get involved in the comments below. And as I say in the end of all my videos, unless you're SNP, Humza or any other cult members, have a great day. Cheery bye now.